Shadow of the Colossus is equally elusive as it is mysterious. Or does that mean the same thing? Regardless, I made a little video just for you, all about the copious amount of colossal content that developer Fumito Ueda just couldn't muster to keep. All from various stages of development, each one just as cool as the last. This video idea came from one of my now 21 subscribers, user MRT-Citer198. Thank you for your suggestion. If anyone else has any ideas, just mosey on down to the comments and tell me. If anyone wants to send it to me privately, I have a personal business email located right on my channel page. But without further ado, now prepare my fellow gamers, because this week's content will be quite interesting, maybe even a little intriguing. Going from the order of the wiki, starting in our first slot, is what could have been the creepiest Colossus in the entire game, Devil. Devil was originally intended to be the smallest colossi in the entire roster, of just a meager 5 meters in height. Donning disproportionate wings onto a pretty fat figure, Devil appears to possess some kind of whacking stick in the screenshots of the in-game model, yet in the concept art is carrying some type of bow and arrow combo. Or he could just be dual-wielding some whacking sticks. I'm not really sure, it's hard to tell. We get a little bit of insight on how Devil was supposed to be fought in direct quotes from the wiki, which were taken from the official art book. You'd defeat it by menacing it with your bow, then drawing closer while hiding in the grass and attacking from behind. I imagine the battle with Devil to be fierce. Fierce indeed. I said this thing was easily in the runners for the creepiest Colossus potentially in the game, and that's really just because of its size. Being just 5 meters tall, well sure that's big for human standards, but for Colossi, that's pretty down to earth. And with that, I mean, it's weird. It's weird how something can be smaller in nature, but then be creepier. I guess because they're more closely related to a human's size, if that makes any sense. But regardless, 5 meters tall is just big enough to be a little off-putting. His arena was named Devil's Plain, located on the map at section D2 next to the Stone Arch Gorge. Having the fight located in some ruins surrounded by tall grass, I imagined you would run around and shoot your bow into Devil to cause him to run towards wherever you were, in which then you could hide inside the bordering grass and sneak behind for a mount. It's a lot like Colossus 4 Phaedra, in that you needed to hide inside the mound at the center of the arena and then hop onto her back for the kill. I truly don't understand why Devil wasn't shipped with the final product. There isn't a humanoid Colossus smaller than 10 meters in the game, and it would have fit quite nicely in place or beside one of the two small quadruped colossi. Screenshots seem to suggest he was very far along in the process too. Of course, there was still a lot more work to do before officially calling him done, but even still, he could have been possibly the favorite in the cast. Who knows? Originally slotted to be the original final boss of Shadow of the Colossus, unfortunately, the only thing available for Evis's appearance is one piece of wonderful concept art. Evis was an absolutely massive quadrupedal mound of flesh and bone, possessing climbable hair along the front hoofs as well as the inner rear thigh pelvic region. Evis looks to have a tail that you would most likely find a way to climb onto, or possibly jump onto, as the hair continues to trail up the back into the lower spinal column. Interestingly, there isn't much for hair on Evis's backside, which leads me to believe that either you were initially tasked with staving off loss of balance as you make your way to Evis's head, or the design was simply not far long enough to insinuate a playable experience. Regardless, the design achieves a right-feeling mixture of animalistic and intelligent, with its mask appearing unmistakably human compared to the more tribal-looking appearances of the other colossi. The official art book says this is a sketch of when we were coming up with the last boss, which only tells me they were not even remotely close to reaching anything final. There easily was potential to become the final boss in the design, that's for sure. Here's a little juice that you may want to know, however. Evis was completely replaced with the concepts of a Colossus that was stationary in nature and quite tall, called Buddha. Or, as we know it now, Malice. Okay, it's a name given by the fans, but even then, it's official. Buddha was a very interesting name choice. I have no final true information, real information on the decision, but clearly Team Nico wanted you to kill something akin to a god, which I think they do achieve with Malice. Evis was located in section L1 behind Argus's arena. The funny thing is, there is a massive hole where that's supposed to be. I do find Argus's arena to appear kind of like just a huge entryway to somewhere. It's really just a long corridor. Food for thought, but of course, only Ueda knows. Griffin was a quadrupedal colossus, shaped like a horse with a bird mask possessing non-functional stone wings that look a little like coral. Standing at just about 10 meters tall, Griffin is cladded in hundreds of tons of armor that doubles as impressive adornments. The only climbable fur on Griffin was located on its back, where its sigils would definitely be. I will say right now that the design looks distinctly early 2000s Final Fantasy, and not just because of the in-game screenshots looking like a PS2 classic. Instead, even the design looks distinctly Final Fantasy X, if you ask me, and I know because 10 is easily my favorite. Griffin would have stuck out prominently against its fellow colossi, however that is not to say that it did not have a good gimmick for the fight. According to the art book, you could defeat it by making use of its weakness, fire. You were meant to fight it by riding aggro as with Colossus 10, which is Dirge. But it took a long time to retry, so it was a Colossus that was rejected. An aversion to fire would not have been original, sure, but it would have been quite different from Celosia's fight, as you were intended to ride on aggro while using a torch. I shouldn't have to tell you that this would look pretty silly. A torch is only so big, and afraid of fire or not, Griffin is a medium-sized Colossus, which is not even remotely small to any standard. I could not find any further info on how you were supposed to get on Griffin's back, but I'd wager you would cause it to flee somewhere in its arena, and well, I don't know. That's the thing, it's too many things at once. Unless aggro could hold the torch in his mouth and have you sneak around, I have no clue how they would have managed this fight. If you guys have something else in mind, shoot a comment. Come on, it's wide open. Griffin was never slotted into the map to be fought. Its testing stage was called Valley, and simply was somewhere far away from the game world. Not much else to be said about it, really. It's a cool design overall, but I think it definitely needed some reworking if it ever was to reach anything final. The same height as Gaius, of 34 meters, easily the coolest, while also simultaneously being completely unfit for the game's roster. Phoenix is a bird-shaped colossus with these brilliant accents of fire across the backside of its wings. Its mask was that of a bird, with one side unscathed contrasting the other side, which is cracked and seeping with possibly magma. I'd honestly call this thing more of a dragon than a bird, but you can tell it was designed after the Phoenix of mythology. According to the in-game screenshots, fur was present nearly everywhere there wasn't fire, making Phoenix look almost too easy to climb onto. You would have to avoid these huge gusts of wind that Phoenix would throw at you while you approached, though. So I guess that's the equalizer. The guidebook detailed that its body was wreathed in flame. You defeated it by plunging it into a lake. That's interesting, if taken at face value. The book tells us that Phoenix would have been the only Colossus in the entire game not defeated by stabbing its sigils. However, you and I both know that's not what it meant. There would have possibly been a body of water somewhere nearby, which then you would have to coax Phoenix into falling into. This would of course put out Phoenix's flame, and then you would be able to climb onto and not suffer severe fire damage. located in section I-4, which is unused, where the closest we can actually get to it is just outside, or if I was wanting to die of old age, at the end of Avion's arena, the water area. The only real reason as to why Phoenix was not used is that the player would have taken too much damage, dismounting and climbing it. However, I will throw in my 4 cents and say that Team Nico found Phoenix to be too far removed from the final cast of Colossi, which I would completely agree with. Since, well, just look at it. It's not really remotely close to the design motif of its fellow Colossi, even its cut brethren. Nevertheless, Phoenix would have been quite a sight if there ever was a sequel, which I honestly hope there won't be, just because the originals, it would just always be better. I'd find it to be just dandy to see something similar rise from the ashes of creation. Meant to be a much more aggressive compatriot to Avion, the 5th Colossus, Rock is a flying, dive-bombing scourge of the sky. 28 meters in length with the temper of your average redditor, Rock looks probably the most like a dragon thanks to its tattered wings and bat-like bone structure, also aided by its head, which is specifically inspired by a frilled neck lizard. Like Phalanx, you need to take out Rock by shooting your bow into the glowy weak spot and cause it to fall. But the cool thing is that frilled lizard part is where you need to actually shoot. I'd imagine the process of killing Rock was quite heart-racing. You'd have to wait for, or coax it into dive bombing you while you knock in an arrow. Suspenseful stuff, except only that was the exact reason why Rock was cut out. According to the all-knowing wiki, Ueda chose to cut Rock out due to the collision detection issue, meaning that every time Rock would dive bomb you, it would just clip through, making it look quite awkward, which would, of course, kill the immersion. I can see why Team Nico took it out, but it definitely would have been cool. Rock was supposed to be located in section D6, called the Badlands, at the time anyway. D6 is actually where D6 is actually where Barba is located now. The entire mountain that exists in D6 used to be open ground, where you could fight it. Personally, while I do like Barba and his fight, having all of that space opened up with a few tall monuments placed right throughout the Badlands would have been really cool to me. The desert may be open enough, but I'd wager that extra space would only really add to the map. Tell me about your thoughts in the comments, if the map would be better or worse for it. Saru is an oddly disturbing Colossus in design, based off of an orangutan with arms outstretched 33 meters tall, possessing what looks to be some kind of monument in place of where its head would be, or possibly a crown. Saru's incredibly long arms have these 4-pronged things that could possibly function as fingers, which let him climb around the roof of his arena. It looks like Saru went through a lot of redesign from being this wacky looking 4-legged grabby thing to eventually a more humanoid shape, to the final design of a fat monk man with massive nipples donning the Urkel special. Saru's arena was never put into the game. It was essentially a big cave with a bunch of stalactites that would be used by Saru to navigate around. Honestly, I could visualize this action in my head and it would be genuinely threatening. Those long arms aren't made to go slow, that's for sure. The wiki states that Saru would break off non-traversable stalactites and throw them at you. But I also think he would try and ass slam you right from above for an instant kill. The way you would make Saru spew that ever-elusive black Colossus juice would be most likely by shooting your bow right at his hands or at the stalactites he's holding onto, causing him to fall. Looks like Saru never made it past planning phases, which tells me Team Nico was not happy with how he felt whatsoever, even despite having an entire model made up or ready for animations. I think he would have made for a very unique addition to the roster, however, you can't really tell me with a straight face he would have helped making a cohesive roster. He's just a bit too far out there. It's the same issue that Phoenix and Griffin had. Slotted to be the third small 4-legged colossi of the group next to Celosia and Zenobia, Sirius is a 6-meter tall boar-bear looking monster boy with very minimal armor present. The mask comprised of a stopped short pig snout with the round eyes of a bear, Capable of running at high speeds, in part due to the lack of armor, your only way to victory would be by running away with aggro, and using the environment to stop it. Located in section E7 and 8 respectively, there is very little room for error. The way you could stop Sirius is with these large Stonehenge structures that would have been placed all around the arena. You would run right through them with Sirius in tow, causing it to knock them over and on top of it, much like Zenobia, which you had to drop the platform to rend her armor. You can actually find the Stonehenge asset on the map even in the remaster. It's been relocated in G7, just beyond Malice's gate. In the 2018 remaster, the structure was made to be collapsed, and even now houses one of the many secret coins. I have a funny thing about spiders in video games. I always want one in every game I play, or at least something that looks like one anyway. Shadow of the Colossus was almost about to have one too. Standing on 6 legs at a towering 38 meters high, taller than even Gaius, was Spider. Spider's appearance is quite solid. 6 legs, each with their own weak point support, that looks like to be some kind of temple on top where it would house its weak point. The underbelly possessed a few white crystalline stalactites that may have been used to fire projectiles, given that the wiki classifies Spider as a pulse shooter. Located in section D3, according to the art book, it was defeated by leading it from water to land, which tells me that at some point there was supposed to be a body of water located in what is now Meadows. The area was named Hillock, and most likely looked substantially different from what it is now. The way you fought Spider was quite unique. There used to be a slicing strike while on horseback. You could ride aggro around to each leg and strike them, causing Spider to eventually fall. It was a very simple in concept fight, and it would have even fit well with the roster in my opinion. However, Ueda said that it was too specific of a move, and so without having one more Colossus whose weakness would also be that slice, Spider fell out of place and was ultimately removed. Worm would have been the original stationary Colossus even before Malice. Worm looks unsurprisingly like a worm, and it's really, really hairy. It has some kind of what was described as a flower bulb-like section for its head. This thing was absolutely terrifying if you ask me. Its mouth was just large enough to fit a human inside, so, you know, that's cool. The only reason why Worm was theorized to be a stationary Colossus is because it lacked any positional data, meaning there wasn't any code present that could tell its model to actually move anywhere beyond its point of origin. This still could mean that the model itself could shift and stretch, however. Looking at the various in-engine screenshots tells me that if Worm was supposed to be stationary, it would act like a sentry and attack anywhere within reach. My guess is that you could mount Worm close to how you would mount Gaius, and that you'd make it try to strike you only to move out of the way in time, which then of course you would be able to jump onto, in Gaius' case, his sword, and then in Worm's case, its body. One thing that I would like to know is that if this thing could graboid you and swallow you up in an instant kill, creepy shit all day long. You were intended to have combat with Worm in section G1 called Dune, where Celosia is. Further speculation. What if Celosia was added in replacement of Worm since Team Nico couldn't get it past the early development stages? Celosia's hole is just one section over from where Worm was supposed to be, and seeing how Celosia lives in a pit, I couldn't be stretching far in assuming that's where Worm was truly supposed to be. But who really knows, right? What I do really know is that it would have been really cool seeing something that dramatically different. It would have been like Dirge 2.0 pretty much. Finally, the last main cut Colossi. 5 pages later, and now I have for you a Mr. Yamuri Alpha, directly translating to Gecko from Japanese. Yamuri A was the younger sibling to Kuromori, the 8th Colossi, which by the way pretty much translates to Dark Gecko. Not only is that incredibly cute, but it also almost is just too perfect of a name really. Yamuri A looked and functioned really identical to Kuromori. Starting with appearance first, take Kuromori and then armor it up. and that's really about it. That's Yamuri. A lizard-shaped quadruped with a truck for a face and a mouth that allows for it to shoot whatever it pleases, with webbed feet that can cling and climb to vertical surfaces, and a tail that would aid primarily in underwater applications. The primary difference between Yamuri and Kuromori, gameplay-wise, would have been that Yamuri would have fired large bursts of air that would have made Wander ragdoll around, as opposed to Kuromori's exploding fireballs of lightning gas. It would have been one of my favorites just for the fact that it can make you ragdoll so heavily. Anything with ragdolls is better than how it was without. Living in Section B3 in an unused area called Saru. Going to B3 kinda kills me because it's just so vast and beautiful, yet literally out in the middle of nowhere. I mentioned in my review for this game, go check it out, that I absolutely adore the fact there is so much unused space, as if it just makes the world feel so believable, and that clearly stands out now especially. Game devs, make your open areas feel better. Play Shadow of the Colossus. Get inspired. Oh, well, hey there. I see you actually made it. Thank you so much for lending me your time, ears, eyes, and enjoying this nice video of the colossi of the platinum hit Shadow of the Colossus. Kindly plunge attack that like button, and maybe even the subscription button as well, should you desire content from a voice like mine. Again, a big thanks to MRT Cider 198 for this week's video suggestion. Again, if you have any ideas that you want to be made into a video, just send me a comment. The comments are right there. They're just waiting for you. All you have to do is just click it, tap it, whatever. Type it in and then send it. Or again, if you want something more personal, send me an email. Official link is in my channel page. Thank you again for taking your time out of the day just to humor me. I'll be back next week for some more high quality content just for your supple eardrums. Have a good night.